Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sam Harvey from the Center for Career and Professional Development. I am the Professional Development Coordinator here in the office. Welcome to Coffee and Conversations, and today we're going to talk about the applications and the background checks. So throughout the weeks, we've covered a lot of topics, resumes, portfolios, creating the job hunting plan, applying. So this is kind of another step within that process. You can always view any of our previous videos on our YouTube channel. I believe it's Praxi CPD, but you can always email me if you have any questions about that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. This will probably be a pretty quick conversation. A lot of this is stuff we've covered in previous weeks, and I'm going to focus probably a little bit more on the background checks just because that's something you're probably a little bit less familiar with. Okay, so we're going to start with the application because that's the part that comes first. So you've gone through all of the steps of your job hunting. You have all of your kind of, I want to apply here's ready to go. You have your everything kind of prepared and you're ready to actually start putting stuff in. So there's a couple of ways that you can go about applying. The first thing is actually getting your stuff together. So you're going to want a resume. You want your resume to be in a PDF format. This is best because it makes sure that things aren't really going to shift around. Most everybody has some software that can read a PDF. But if you use a Microsoft document, then Microsoft, is depending on the type, the version that they have. If they're not using Microsoft, if they're using maybe one of the open office softwares, then that could change it. If they don't have your typeface, that can cause problems. So it's always best to keep things in the PDF format just to make sure that it's actually going to look how you assume it will as it goes through. I would definitely check this out. Try having other people open it on their computers at different programs if you have the opportunity to. An example of why you might want to do that is if you have your portfolio link as an embedded clickable link. We've had instances, if you've ever done any of the recruiting through our office, we always ask that you send a resume with a live link to your portfolio. And we have had instances where the PDF had a working link, but when we've gotten it here, something had gone wrong with the link and it wasn't clickable and didn't end up forwarded on. So just be aware of things like that as far as testing out the usability of the document you send. That being said, it's probably still really good to have a version of your resume that's easy for you to copy and paste from. So not necessarily something you'll send in, but a version that is going to be a quick way, and I'll talk about why that's important to have in a second. And then the other thing you're going to want to have ready is your cover letter. So you've gone through and written your specific cover letter for this company. You also want that to be in a PDF format, just because the same issue of you want to make sure that your formatting stays the same. This is especially important in the art and design world just because formatting is an important part of how all these things look. While it won't be like the immediate thing, especially if you're looking for especially a visual position, they want to make sure that you understand how files are supposed to work. So when you're saving them, but also if something goes super weird, they might think that you made a design error when really it just ended up being a technical error overall. And if they'd asked for anything else, if they'd asked for references upon the application, you're going to want to have those kind of ready to go. Just kind of and your portfolio, you're going to want to have ready to go so that you can do the application. So then you're going through, you're ready to start the application process. So the official steps are first actually doing the application. So this can be a multitude of different sort of things. This could be sending the email to the person that you needed to, so that's just attaching the things in. This could be through a third-party website. I'm not sure exactly all of them, but things like you might apply through something to the website and then apply. So if you apply through Pratt Pro, for example, you fill out the stuff on Pratt Pro and that sends it to the company. And Pratt Pro, it sends it usually to the company in the form of an email. The other version would be if you're applying sort of traditional ways through their actual website. Usually, oftentimes through the website and oftentimes through the third party, there's actually going to be an application that you fill out. So it's not just necessarily sending the documents, but also answering some questions as well. You'll definitely upload the documents. They'll ask that at some point throughout the experience, but you'll also have to fill out supplementary information. That could just be name, address. It could be a lot of stuff that's like, you're like, that's already there, but you'll fill that out. So this is, as I said, this where that copy and paste resume can come in really handy, because a lot of times, and you've probably, if you haven't applied for a job yet, you've probably heard people complaining about this, but a lot of time they'll ask you for a copy of your resume, and then they will also ask you to type out for them in their individual fields your previous work experience with like titles, dates, times, who you work for, and a description of what you did there. Having that copy, oftentimes what will happen is you'll upload your resume before that and it'll sort of try and autofill those fields. Personally, my resume does not really work well for that sort of formatting. It just isn't always sure what dates and what things are related to which headers at times. It's just a software that's kind of going through trying to smart read it. It can often get a good chunk of it right, but oftentimes there will be mistakes and it won't necessarily be a seamless transition through. So this will give you that chance to really just be able to go through it and then just copy and paste the right thing in rather than having to retype it out every time. And it's super tedious and very annoying, but it is a part of the application process at this point. So you want to make sure that the information that it pre-populates, and there's also a chance that their technology isn't up to the point of being able to pre-populate. They will oftentimes, this could be a reason for uploading the Word document version of the resume instead, or having a less complicated, maybe no columns, more traditional looking resume, is that these systems are probably a little bit more created to read those than it might be your regular creative resume, even if it's still a really simple creative resume. Outside of having to put in your previous work experience, some other things they might ask are things like, are you a convicted felon? They might ask about your sort of identification profile. That should be optional for you to fill out, and that's totally your choice if you want to fill it out. It shouldn't be being used in the hiring process. They can't use it, legally speaking, in the hiring process for trying to figure out, because discrimination laws and all of that fun stuff. But it's completely your choice if you want to self-identify that. And then they might ask you things such as like your previous salaries or your salary requirements. In New York City, it is currently illegal for a company to ask what your previous salaries were. That was a law passed very recently in New York City, but if you're looking at places outside of New York City, that might be something that they ask. You can totally leave that blank. As far as I would be aware, you don't have to ever fill that out unless they might make it a required thing to be able to actually fill the thing out, but there's also the point of view you might not have another salary that you could put in as well. So the sort of next step is from that. So once you have all of that information in, it's pretty easy to fill out. Most of it's really simple questions of just filling out things that you would expect that they would do. They might ask you like, oh, do you have these skills? Check some things off. Okay, here's where you can upload your cover letter, anything like that. Addresses, where you went to school, a lot of stuff that you're like, well, this is already on my resume, but you're making me retype it. So once you hit submit, what happens is your application is then put into a screening process. So this is really why they kind of make you fill out that form, even though it's on your resume already, is that they're really looking to match your skills and your experiences to the job. And often the first step of doing this is that it's a computer program kind of going through and looking for the similarities to make sure that you meet minimal requirements. This is definitely done by large companies where they're kind of having it go through and just do some matching. Cool, we said you need to know Photoshop. Is Photoshop mentioned anywhere within these documents? Cool, we said that they need at least 5 years experience. How does this add up with all of the years that they told us that they have here? These are ways for these companies to be able to lower the amount of resumes that they need manpower to actually look through, and then person power to actually look through and allow more the candidates that at least hit a minimal requirement to be the ones that get the most attention. So this is definitely a point where it might be that you get overlooked for a position because maybe something didn't match up, you didn't hit enough of their blips. Why that follow-up email, if you can get it, can be really important, because then it might actually be a person looking at it and going, oh yeah, this person looks great. I don't know why we didn't call them in. Yeah. This is, as I said, true at larger companies. At smaller companies, even at Pratt, for example, as my office has been hiring in the recent months, we look at the resumes here. We are looking through them oftentimes. I personally try and look at the actual uploaded resume, but we also have the option to look at the copy pasted in versions of the resumes as well. It is often that I've found that often people won't attach a resume as well, they'll just fill out the application process. I think having the actual resume is nice, it's a nicer thing to look at, it's a better organized document than the weird, not pretty computer generated resume, from at least my own experience being on the hiring side of that. So then the next piece of that is they've gone through the screening, they found people they like, they'll pull you in for an interview. I'm not gonna harp on this because we did talk about the interviews in previous things, but this could be over the phone, in Skype, in person. There is a possibility that there could be sort of tests along the way as you do this. These could be tests such as, if you've ever heard about Google, Google has you actively have to solve a problem, and it could be like a 4-hour interview where they're looking to see how you solve this problem. I previously have worked as a graphic designer, and I have had people go, cool, we've liked you for this. Now the next step is that we want to see your take on this. It has been both part of the application process and both part of the interview process. There are also certain jobs that'll offer you like a part-time sort of 3-month test period as well, as far as like the test things go. And so then you've gone through, you've done your interviews. If they've asked for tests, you've done great, you're amazing, they like you. That then they give you a job offer. The one thing, and this is what goes into kind of the next thing, is your job offer may be contingent on you completing certain things. So this could be something like a drug check. This could be a reference check. It could be that you need to complete a physical, a credit check, or, as I will talk to, a background check. These other types of checks kind of fall within there, and they are legally allowed to ask them so long as it's covered under the job. So if you're sitting at a desk all day, there's not really a need for them to have to ask you for a physical, but if they ask all of their employees for it, it might be okay. I'm not as sure as far as the physicals aspect of it, but as I say, I'm gonna go into background checks a little bit more specifically. So background checks. So what is a background check? We'll start with that. So it's basically a review of commercial, criminal, and sometimes your financial records. So they're really looking to just see who you are, not just according to you, but according to what your records actually say. So why are companies asking for this? Why aren't they just being like, yeah, cool, this person said that? They really just want to ensure that everything that you have said is correct. People lie on their resumes all the time. So if they want to make sure that everything's good and that they're not putting the company at risk or their own reputations. They could hire someone and say that this person's awesome, they went to this Ivy League school, they're great, and then it comes out months later that this person didn't actually go to an Ivy League school. That can cause a lot of issues for the company at that point. So some things that they might really be looking at is if you actually went to the college. They can't get your college records, but they can probably check to see if you were actually at the college. Or the previous employment. Were you working at this company when you said you were? They also can look at anything that's like a criminal related thing, and I have a longer list of exactly what background check covers in a minute. But that's really for them looking for any issues that are specifically related to the job that you're going to be doing. So if you're trying to be a bus driver and they're then going to look at your driving record to make sure that you don't have, that you've been in like a ton of crashes or that you have a lot of speeding tickets or anything like that. Because if they hired you without doing that, and if that came up later on, then that would just be a whole problem for them to look into. So like if you're going to be, for example, handling money, then they're going to make sure that you don't have any sort of like embezzlement issues in your past or other like big financial issues in the past that will come up and cause liability for the company. So if they are going to perform a background check on you, they have to ask and let you know first. They can't just perform it later on. So they need to get written permission from you, and this is why usually they won't do this until they actually have an offer on the table, and the offer will be contingent upon you passing the background test. So you have to give them written permission, and this is only if you plan to take the job. If you at this point are like, I don't actually want this job, then you can just say, I'm not going to take the job. That's good. But you have to give them permission to do this. They must inform you if they don't hire you because of something that they found on this report. So if you were, for example, applying to be a bus driver and they found like, oh, this person got like 20 tickets in the last 5 years. I actually have no idea what's normal for tickets or whatever, but you got 20 tickets in the past year, we can't hire you because of that. They have to let you know that, and then they have to provide a copy of the report that says that. They have to provide a copy of that report because it gives you the opportunity to look and see what the report says and to make sure that there's not an issue with it. Background checks are not perfect. There's not perfect records of you that exist out in the world. There's a chance that something is wrong, so that gives you the chance to look it over and to make sure that there's not something wrong on your report in that way. It could be something got weird. I have a cousin who turned out her and someone else shared a social security number and they didn't find out till she was going to college. So things like that are just, they stem up. The system is in no way, shape, or form perfect. So you get the copy of it in order to be able to see if something is wrong and that you can dispute that. No, actually, I did not get 20 tickets. I have never gotten a ticket ever, and start to follow up on what happened there. And they must use it for, if they're gonna do a background check on you, they have to do it for all employees. It can't just be, we do it every now and then. They can't not background check. They can't background check all the men, but not all the female women. They can't decide, pick and choose who they want to do that for, because then it looks, one, that is a form of discrimination, but it's really important that they're not using it as a way around discrimination, more or less, as a way to still discriminate, but no, we're doing it because this background check proved this, not because we just don't want to hire people within the LGBTQ plus community here. So that's a whole other story that, as far as disclosing that goes, but basically they can't use it as a way to discriminate against you. The reason that they don't hire you does need to be a reason related to the job. And it has to be something, it has to be background checks for every incoming employee and not just for ones when they decide to. So more specifically, what the background check can look for. It can verify your social security number. So this is like the most intense background check. Most places are not going to be doing this intense of a background check on you. It's going to be really like if you were trying to work at a school that had, and you had no idea, like you weren't going to be working with money, there'd be no reason for them to do a full credit report for you. If you're not going to be driving, there's no reason for them to get your driving records. They're probably not going to kind of try and figure out all of the people that you know, but like if you were trying to get into like a government like FBA job or FBI job, they probably do a more extensive background check than just your everyday like private company would. So social security, work history, and that's really going to be to verify that you actually have worked at these places that you do. Possibly to verify, like see who the people that you know are. And as I said, this is more to make sure that it's not depending on the like level probably of access that you're getting in the job. The full credit report, that's a lot more associated with if you're going to be working at a bank or in a financial institute. Driving records, we've covered. Criminal history. This is important for them to look at. There are often times that they could say, well, you lied about having a criminal history if you didn't check that box off in the initial screening that they did. They're not allowed to discriminate against you for having a criminal record, but the nature of the crime can affect whether they give you the job or not. And probably the most obvious thing, if you have any crimes around children, you obviously can't be working with children then. It's just important things for them to be able to know. You are a shoplifter, they might be able to say, well, we can't have you working in retail. So this is important to know, and everything that they look into should be related to a job. So they shouldn't be looking into your credit report once more if it has nothing to do with that. They can't say, well, we can't hire you, you shoplifted, if that has, well, that I won't necessarily say, but shoplifting, if it has nothing to do with the job, that wouldn't be something I would be as worried about. Then they may give you, if you do check off that you have a criminal record, it might be something that comes up where they give you a chance to disclose what it is that you did to them prior to them doing the background check. Just be aware that there's a very, very high likelihood they're going to do a background check. About 70% of companies do background checks, just to be sure, and because it covers them in the case of anything. Okay, do I have anything? Okay, so I feel like I had one other point I was going to make as far as this goes. Okay, I can't think of what that point was, but that's kind of everything I generally have to say as far as the general background checks go. It's really a way of the company just being able to cover themselves. They, once more, will always have to let you know before they do it. And, oh, I know what it was. And knowing the types of things that they look into is great for you, because now this is some stuff that if you know you're going into, that you can look into beforehand. So if if it is a financial institution, get yourself a version of your credit report. Reach out to, if you do have any sort of criminal record, reach out to the places where that happened and figure out what the statutes or limitations are on them having that actually be on your record. If you did something as a minor, it might be that it's supposed to be off now that you are no longer a minor. It's definitely spelled security wrong, but in general, now being aware that these things, and also just being aware for yourself, is always good, just because this could be a chance if you look at your credit report and you're like, wait, why is my credit card score that low? You might find out that there has been an issue, and you can start to resolve that before this background check is actually put into play, so that you are going to not have to worry about having the job rescinded because of something that doesn't actually apply to you. Okay, so that's kind of all of my points. I'm around right now for questions, so you can feel free to put those into the chat, but otherwise we are done for today, and I hope you all have a great day.